Remember Me is a 2010 drama romance that was directed by Alan Coulter, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it's not a name I'm too familiar with, so I don't recognize him making anything else really, but I certainly recognize a lot of the cast members in here with Robert Pattinson, Chris Cooper, Pierce Brosnan, one of my favorite Bonds that ever played in a movie. The acting in it is tremendous, and I remember watching this film quite often, basically when it came out. And the first time I watched it, I really fell in love with it. And I thought this is the perfect example of Robert Pattinson actually showing his acting tropes and doing something outside of the Twilight saga that he became famous for. And this was at least always the film that I would direct people to when they were all like, "Oh, sparkling vampires, Robert Pattinson, he can't act, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, have you seen anything else that he's been in? Especially this film. Now I usually direct people to Good Time, and Good Time is a phenomenal movie. I do not own Good Time, but I strongly recommend watching that as well if you want to see a very powerful and talented performance by Robert Pattinson. But this used to be the one that I would direct people to, and I really like it. I rewatched it for this review, and I will start off by saying that I forget how cheesy this film was, and I forget how corny certain scenes were directed and how unbelievable and exaggerated things were. And I will also start off by saying that the performance of Robert Pattinson, although is still really good, there are certain moments where there is overacting. It's not just Pattinson, there's overacting from other people in the film, particularly his best friend, roommate that he lives with, Aiden. We'll get to him too. I don't remember it being that in your face, that corny, that childish. Not, is it childish? Sappy, I guess, is a better way to put it. Like, a lot of performances, a lot of themes in this film are so sappy. I also want to say that I've been doing these reviews a lot, going beat by beat by beat with talking about the plot of the film and going like, this happened and this happened and this happened. I want to try doing these reviews a little bit more focused on moments rather than just plot by plot, because that gets a little boring, to be honest. I'm still going to obviously talk about the film beginning to end. I'm going to try not to jump around all over the place, even though sometimes I'm tempted to. But I want to try more so focusing on moments of the movies that I'm reviewing to talk about, especially the scenes that stood out to me the most. And for this one, ironically and conveniently enough, it's the opening of the movie. It opens up with this mom and daughter in a subway, and there's these sketchy looking two guys in the corner, which you don't know. They seem like they're going to commit violence, and then you're not too sure, but eventually you're like, okay, well, what we expected happens. They shake hands, one goes off in the other direction, and then eventually, like 5 seconds later, they come tag team the mother and daughter and start robbing the mom. She puts the daughter behind her back, and everything gets very tense, and they're threatening both of them and asking for the ring on her finger and the purse, everything in her purse, yada yada yada. They do this while the subway is coming by, so there's a lot of noise, and then the subway stops and they get into the subway. What happens is they get into the subway, and then the mom looks at the guy's face and the guy looks at the mom's face, and then he realizes that she knows what he looks like, kind of thing. So they committed this robbery without masks. Dumb. Then he shoots the mom because she saw his face. And I was wondering, did he at least give her a warning? Like, that would be really, really fucking evil if he didn't even give her a warning or anything like that. Don't look at my face, keep looking at the ground, don't look at my face, kind of thing. So I rewinded it, put on the subtitles, and he did give her a warning and told her not to look. And then she looked anyway, and then fate happened. Still wrong, still terrible, still tragic. But at least she was given the warning, at least. But then the daughter is crying and crying, and this is what I have to talk about this opening scene. Very unrealistic, and I was watching this and I'm like, oh geez, am I going to be into a movie that I used to love? Like, dearly. Nostalgia played a great benefit to this film for sure. But there's the crime scene, and there's the mother underneath a blanket, and the daughter's crying, and there's one police officer in that subway. There's also nobody in the subway, and seemingly nothing barricaded, so it's just a subway scene. Most of the walls are filmed, like, in black, so you just get this kind of middle room centered shot of what's going on with the crime scene, and everything else is kind of left in the dark, which I appreciate that kind of cinematography. But Chris Cooper is introduced, and he's the father of the daughter, and he's a cop in New York. And it's one police officer interviewing the daughter, and then the daughter runs into Chris Cooper's arms. But I'm like, that place would be swarmed. Are you kidding me? There would be sirens all over the place. It would be like caution tape all over the fucking place. Like, that would be a swarmed area, and there's 3 people there. 4 if you include the body. There's the daughter, Chris Cooper, and one other cop. I'm like, this is dumb. So I got over that, and then we get into the introduction of Robert Pattinson's character, Tyler. And Tyler is heading off to a funeral, and he's showing up at this funeral. He's been drinking. He kisses his little sister, Caroline. I forget the actress's name, but she's such a cute girl. Very, very good looking today. But she was like 12 when she made this movie, and she showed promise in her performance, kind of thing, and like as an actress, like you could tell she didn't do much, but you can tell she had the acting chops in her. Can't find her name anyway. But yeah, the girl who plays Caroline, very cute. They're at the funeral. Pierce Brosnan, who plays the dad, whose name is Charles Hawkins. I don't know what his position is, but he's very, very rich. He just works constantly. He might be a lawyer, but possibly, but I'm not quite sure. You can tell there's huge tension between Robert Pattinson's character, Tyler, and Charles, played by Pierce Brosnan, and it's constant, and it's very, very apparent. This is where the overacting comes from. Every scene that Robert Pattinson and Pierce Brosnan are on screen, Robert Pattinson just milks the sappy, broken, emo kid, like, hair and facial expressions, and, like, just peaking on the line between crying hysterically and angry as fuck, and it's so, like, he'll just make these like really over the top teen angst, even though he's playing a 22-year-old, like angsty, like, oh, I hate my father, everything sucks, just not trying to criticize. Obviously he was directed this way. This is the director, not him, because he gives a solid performance. I'm not criticizing Pattinson at all. This is obviously the vision that the director had and what the director wanted to do with the film. And then they're in this restaurant, and again, the tension between Charles and Tyler is strong, and Tyler realizes that Charles is ignoring Caroline when Caroline is trying to tell a story about her art projects, and Charles is just, oh, I'm rich and I got business stuff to do. And then he calls him out and he's like, what's Caroline talking about? Charles, played by Pierce Brosnan, is like, now is not the time for your heroics, son. It's said throughout the film that it's Tyler's brother who was buried in the graveyard. This is going to be obviously a spoiler review, so I'm just going to be talking about this film ad nauseum. His brother committed suicide sometime before. Robert Pattinson also narrates his own character. He starts talking about Gandhi, how Gandhi had this quote that most of things in life are irrelevant, but you should do them anyway. And Gandhi was right about the first part. So you can tell this kid is like I said, angsty and certainly pessimistic and just highly depressive kind of thing. He has this roommate that I mentioned named Aiden. And Aiden's like the comedic relief, but times 10. Like, this guy is just the jokester every time he pops on screen. He's literally a jester just bouncing around, like making these comedic quotes like you would typically see like a comedian on stage. But that's just him all the time. It doesn't matter where they're at. They go to a club, and outside of the club, they're with these 2 girls. They're in the back alley. They're just kind of planning what to do afterwards. These 2 random guys who have this Australian or British accent, it sounded more Australian, get into a fight, like an argument with these 2 other guys, and then there's like a car involved and whatnot. But Robert Pattinson looks at this argument going on and then randomly just walks over and just starts punching one of the guys who started an argument with the other guys, just starts punching him out, putting himself completely into the fight without saying a word. Obviously, the film and the director is kind of throwing it in their face that this guy has anger issues, and he has unresolved trauma and unresolved bitterness inside himself, where he just likes to start random fights with random strangers. And he does, and then, the Aiden character is trying to like pull him out and everything. Cops show up. Chris Cooper's character shows up. Basically, lets Tyler go. He wants to bust 2 of the guys that were starting the argument in the first place, but the 2 guys Robert Pattinson's character Tyler found to be not the guilty ones, and he comes in and he voices his opinion, even though he was completely let go. And then he starts to get into Chris Cooper's face, and Chris Cooper like basically starts to get aggressive with him and like pushes him onto the car, and I think he gets like a black eye. He's taken to prison for the night. As well as Aiden, so both of them are in like the drunk tank or whatever. He's bailed out the next day by Charles, and he goes to the office of Charles. I think he's a lawyer. We're just gonna go for the fact that he's a lawyer. If he's not, if he's something else, correct me. But do you really want to correct me on this film that's kind of hated by a lot of people from 2010? Go for it if you want, but we're just gonna go for Charles as a lawyer. So Charles is working in this beautiful like office building, like there's gold plated shit on the wall, like everything just looks beautiful. Here comes Tyler lighting a cigarette in the lobby, and the woman, the secretary, is like, you know you can't smoke in here. And Tyler's like, oh, what? With like the cigarette? And he's like, but there's an ashtray over here. And it's like a bowl or something, and she's just like, that's a bowl. And he's chilling, all rebel without a cause type shit. Like, it's just so corny and so ridiculous how this would never happen in any other situation. I don't care if he's Charles Hawkins' kid. No, it's just not gonna fly. But anyways, he goes into the office and they have this other like banter again, and he's all like emo kid, and I don't know what their conversation was, but basically he acts like a whiny kid once again. This film kicks off basically when him and Aiden are at their college or university, wherever they go, and they run into this girl. Her name is Allie, and Allie is the love interest of Tyler throughout the film. And what happens is Aiden saw Allie with Chris Cooper's character and realized that Allie was Chris Cooper's daughter. So Aiden, being the jokester and funny guy that he is, he's like, hey, what do you think that you go up to Allie and ask Allie out? Because, listen, you know the cop that beat the shit out of you the other night? That's his daughter, and you can totally form a relationship with her and, like, get back at the fucking prick that beat the shit out of you and, like, fuck his daughter. Wouldn't that be hilarious? That's how their relationship blooms, is because Aiden came up and told Tyler that here's the daughter of the pig that beat you up the other day. Go fuck her. And then Tyler's like, okay. So he approaches her, and it's actually a good pickup scene when Tyler talks to Allie, and the way it's handled, like the way he is nervous, but he maintains his composure, and like what he says, he's smooth enough. Eventually, he charms her up, and she agrees to go on a first date with him. And then they go to this restaurant. It's an Indian restaurant, and she orders dessert first. And then there's this cheesy interaction where she states that she always wants to eat dessert first, just in case, you know, anything can happen. She could be struck by lightning, or a meteor can land on the restaurant before she gets to actually enjoy what she really wanted. So she always orders dessert first. And mind you, this is the girl grown up who was in the subway at the beginning of the film, where she witnessed her mother murdered. So she has this very traumatic upbringing, just like Tyler has a very traumatic upbringing with his brother's suicide, and he blames his father, Charles, which there's, you know, he's not wrong. I mean, Charles is a very egotistical, self-centered prick, but you can always make decisions for your own life. You should never blame your parents. Let that be a lesson. Like, your parents raised you and everything, but you're not a copy of your parents. You're not a product of your parents. You can grow up and become an adult and make your own decisions and make your own wise choices. Basically, you don't have to be an emo kid and blame your parents your entire life, is what I'm getting at. The Indian restaurant. She orders dessert first, and he finds this all like sexy and artsy and you know, like she's so smart kind of thing. Which I actually I don't mind that scene. It's cheesy as fuck, but I actually find it kind of intriguing in the way she says it and everything. She's a good actress herself. Very beautiful too. Gorgeous. So then they go to a fair, and he spends like $150 to $200 to win her this panda bear. And I think it's mentioned that he bribed the guy, but whatever. She walks out with this like massive panda bear that's like the size of her. This cab comes around, and the cab driver's grumpy, and they're talking for like 5 minutes outside of the cab. He tries to kiss her, but she refuses. She's like, oh, I don't do that on the first date. And he's like, oh, really? Well, that's funny. You know, you eat dessert first because you just don't want to take the chance of something happening before you get to the dessert, but that's okay. But kissing, getting to that, you'll wait, even though anything could happen in the meantime. Good game, buddy. Good game. I like your style. The conversations he's able to have with Allie, I really, really find humorous and entertaining, very much so. Even though the entire reason of him starting a conversation with her in the first place was evil. to say the least. So then they go on their like second date. He invites her over to the apartment. They have this like spraying water scene. I think he sprays her. They're eating spaghetti, and then he sprays her with the dishwasher sprayer thing, and then he gets her wet. Huh? And then she, of course, in retaliation, takes this big pot of water, which I hope to God was not boiling, and just dumps the fucking water on him. And, like, I think there's, like, spaghetti in it still, and he's just drenched in this pasta water. I'm like, okay, he sprinkled you with, like, basically a shower sprayer of water, and you're gonna take a bucket of pasta water and just fucking dump it on him, and it goes all over the floor, too. I'm like, who's gonna clean that shit up? Who's gonna clean that shit up? And then he like grabs her, and you can clearly tell that when he grabbed her to pick her over her shoulder, he got like a good hand of ass. He really got in there. Like he picks her up. He wants to pick her up by the legs, but you can tell that he did this whole. It's very obvious, very very obvious. And then he takes her to the shower, and then they're like wrestling with each other, and it's just this corny ass scene that's also brilliant and beautiful at the same time. It's cheesy as fuck, but it still holds that enjoyability. Like, I had a good time with this film, even though I can pick out its flaws. The thing with this film is that certain things were just taken over the top, and just, it's overripe. This film is overripe with its sentimental, poor me, woe is me, like, tragedy. And it's not even the fact that it's just uber depressing either, because even that wouldn't be a problem. I've seen tons of movies that are uber depressing. 13 is uber depressing and brilliant. 237, I have a review for it on the channel, is uber depressing and brilliant. There's a film called Detachment with Adrian Brody. Uber depressing, and I want to review that film at some point. But brilliant. This film it's not even uber depressing, it's just, it comes off as, instead of having this like juicy, delicious mango, you have this overripe, too sweet, too sugary, too syrupy, where it just like melts all over your hands and gets your arms all sticky. That was the weirdest analogy I think I've ever talked about on the channel, but you know what I mean. This film is just hamming it too much. It gets to a scene where they come back, and they're already dating at this point, but here comes Aiden, who wants to take both of them to this like Irish party. I don't think it's St. Patrick's Day, but there's this Irish party going on. Allie gets wasted. Allie has to stay the night at Tyler's apartment. She's throwing up everywhere. She stays the night. She didn't tell her daddy that she told her daddy who was coming home, Chris Cooper, but she never showed up till the morning, which is not a thing you want to do, especially if you're female with your parents or your father. Like, if you disappear through the entire night, I know, I don't have any kids, but like, I would know that I would be so worried, sick. You want to have the basic courtesy of like letting whoever is responsible for you know where you are, kids watching. But shit happens, you know, like it's you know, it's life. So she goes home in the morning, and then, you know, her father's like yelling at her for drinking, and then it turns into this like argument, and then she brings up the mother and like, oh, you let mom die or something, and then he smacks her in the mouth and she gets this big sore, and then it turns into this like really dramatic moment. But like I said, the movie plays everything cheesy, so it does it like, this viewing specifically, it feels very Hallmark at times, and it feels very overdone. It's overcooked. Like I said, I think it's the writing and the directing. I don't think it has anything to do with the performances, because the performances are actually really good. Pierce Brosnan, Robert Pattinson, even the funny Aiden kid, and of course the girl, Allie's character. Allie's the actress who plays her. Finally, Charles agrees to go to dinner and meet Tyler's new girlfriend, and they go, and that's tense as fuck. See, the thing with Tyler too, he always eggs his father on. He won't even try to have a civil moment with his father. He's always trying to egg his father on, and then when his father snaps, he's like, oh, well, see, there you go, you're an asshole, just like I thought you were. It's like, he always tries to like poke the bear at all times, and I'm like, can you just like take one moment to maybe give a chance to your father? He's always going to every situation with his father, wanting to make the bad situation happen. So they're at this like fancy ass dinner, and the father's chill and everything, and then close to the end of the dinner, he gets a phone call. Charles has to be somewhere, and then he's like, that's what I thought. That's what I always thought. And then he's like, don't forget to come to the art exhibit with Caroline. And it's funny, I didn't talk too much about Caroline. Caroline and Tyler's relationship is so cute, and I think this is the best part of the film, is the big brother, little sister dynamic that there is in this character. Like, Caroline is probably the character that Tyler cares for the most. Like, if he was going to take a bullet for somebody, between Allie and Caroline, it'd be Caroline. Like, There's nobody that he's like a father figure to Caroline. And I think that's beautiful, and I think the film really represents that well. And I know for a fact that some people are going to say, well, their relationship was kind of creepy, actually. Like, he seemed like a little bit like groomish with his sister. I'm like, are you fucking kidding? It's his little fucking sister. There's no weirdness to it. Like, there's none. There's zero. I've seen weird. It's not. Okay? I've seen it. This is not it. He's very, very protective. Sometimes too much, for sure, but he's very protective of Caroline, and she also admires the hell out of him. Like, she worships this guy. Like, the way she views him, like, she looks at this guy as like a role model, like no tomorrow. Like, it's just pure love and respect from an older brother to a younger sister, and I love it. And I love how much he sticks up for her. I love that scene in the classroom. Again, done cheesy. A lot of things in this film are unfortunately executed the wrong way. But the classroom scene where she just came from the birthday party and they cut her hair and she had to get this like kind of boyish haircut. Not too boyish, but she obviously didn't like it. The girls were making fun of her in class, and of course the girls, even the mom got involved and called the other mom and is like, your daughter's cut my daughter's hair. What the hell is wrong with it? And you're like, oh, well, she did it to herself. She did it to herself. She did it. She took a pair of scissors and did it to herself. She went to a birthday party, and the girl's excuses was, she did it to herself. Well, wasn't there witnesses? Did she actually do it to herself? My money is on the bitchy little girls did it to her. But then you have the scene in the classroom where he hears a little girl saying something about his little sister's hair, and then he just grabs like the fire extinguisher and whips it out the window. And the teacher's like, please stop, what are you doing? And then of course he goes to jail a second time for destruction of private property, and then the dad bails him out again. One of my favorite scenes in this film is, and it always has been, where he interrogates his father at the business meeting when the father didn't show up to the art exhibit of his daughter. This is a little bit earlier, like slightly earlier. I always liked that performance from Robert Pattinson, even this time. Even though it's still overacted and over the top in a lot of ways, I just like how it's written, and I've always related to that. You know, standing up for what's important and challenging anybody who thinks that work is more important or time is more important or ignoring what's more valuable in your life. And he really, really calls out his father Charles in that scene, and I love it. And he's just hurt and pissed, and I've been there. Like, I've been there so many times. This is why I think I related to this character, especially when I was more so in my early and mid-20s. I think because I'm in my mid-30s now, and my understanding is starting to become a little bit more mature and a little bit more smoothed out, where I'm not as like angsty and emo, as you could say, as I was when I was in high school and in my early 20s. But I think I've always loved this film so much because of how angry, not bitter is the wrong word, but angry and frustrated he was with his father, and frustrated with how much he was with life, and how people just lacked the intelligence to see what's actually important in life. Like this 12 or whatever year old girl being so passionate about art, and her father not even having the audacity to show up to something that she loves, you know, like not even caring for 5 minutes, 5 seconds about what his daughter loves. Tyler stood for that, and Tyler biked his ass over to the office and was like, Dad, like, Buck, like, what's wrong with you, kind of thing. So that was intense, and that's still my favorite scene in the film. Always has been my favorite scene in the film, and that's the one that's most impactful for sure. And then you get to the ending of the film, and you start to get clues onto where this film is taking place. So many people are offended by this ending. Like, even on Rotten Tomatoes, the little blurb says a borderline offensive ending, because they throw in the 9/11 stuff into it. And the twist is that the ending of this film takes place on September 11th, 2001, and the office building that Charles Hawkins was in, his office was in the Twin Towers. And at the end of the film, Tyler goes to the office and waits for his father, and his father never shows up to the office, so Tyler dies at the end in the towers, but everybody else is safe. Allie's fine. She's seeing this tragedy. Caroline's fine. Charles went to drive Caroline to school because he finally he had his son get to him, and he finally had a change of mind, and he's like, yeah, I do need to spend more time with my daughter. So he decided to take Caroline for a ride to school that day. That's why he was late to the office. And Tyler was the only person in the office. Tyler lost his life teaching everybody else to appreciate life. So Tyler lost his life right after he helped Allie, Caroline, Charles, even his mom in certain ways, to appreciate life more. That's a beautiful ending. And people are like, well, why throw 9/11 into it? Why not? It was 9 years after the event, ish. How the fuck is that offensive? Because it has to do with 9/11? Because people don't want to talk about it? Because people want to forget it? I don't understand how that's offensive. Well, we're in 2024. What's not offensive? Fuck's sakes. This video, somebody's going to find something offensive in it. But yeah, I think the ending is fine. Like some people, it came out of nowhere. Well, lots of endings come out of nowhere. Like that's the point of a twist ending. It's supposed to take you by surprise. You see Tyler and Aiden watching American Pie 2, which came out in September of 2001 in theaters, and it's supposed to take you by shock. It's supposed to take you by surprise because that's the point of a twist, and it also hammed in its message perfectly. Tyler had these passions, and the whole quote from Gandhi's like most things in life are insignificant, but do them anyway. And that's what he did. He voiced his opinion anyway, and he bettered a lot of people in the process, and I firmly believe in that. I am a strong advocate in voicing your opinion and seeing who sticks around, because that's the whole point of it. It doesn't matter what you say. You're going to piss some people off, and then there's going to be people who agree with what you're saying. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter, black or white. It doesn't matter where you stand. You're going to have people who like it and don't like it. There's nothing else to do at the end of the day but voice your opinion. Because if you voice it red, people are going to love you and people are going to hate you. If you voice it green, people are going to like you and they're going to hate you. If you voice it blue, people are going to love you and people are going to hate you. So it's the same. All you're doing is picking your poison. And that sounds negative, but all you're doing is finding what you relate to and saying it, and then seeing where the chips land. Stand for what you know, and that's what Tyler did. And yes, tragically he lost his life at the end of it, but he made the world better being this tiny little teeny microscopic human in New York City. So I have no problems with the ending. I certainly wasn't offended or triggered because a tragic event was put in a movie. Ooh, okay, so are people offended by Schindler's List or anything else? Like I don't know. I don't know. I'm just gonna end the review right there. It's a good film to check out. A brilliant performance from Robert Pattinson, and it's very enjoyable. And it actually gets best in its third act. I think the best part of the movie is its third act, and that's when it starts to really come together and really showcase what kind of message the film is going for, and I really appreciate it for what it was. Is it perfect? No. Is it cheesy as fuck? Yes. But it's a digestible, cheesy film. I don't want to compare this to The Notebook, but The Notebook is actually, in my opinion, a better made film than this one. But The Notebook is cheesy too, but it's still very much enjoyable. This is in the same vein. Great cast too, so I give this one a thumbs up, and I'm glad I revisited it. I didn't love it as much as I remember loving it, but I still enjoyed it fine. So that's what I got. Remember Me from 2010. Find it somewhere. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.